I was drafted, but I wanted to go in before that because all my buddies had gone in. All of them had gone. Most of them had gone in the Navy. But I've been hunting jackrabbits out west of town here quite a bit, and I kind of like the idea of a rifle.
On September 13th, 1943, U.S. Army Private William Crawford was with the 36th Infantry on the assault of Hill 424 near Altavilla, Italy.
On the morning of the 13th, we attacked their main line of defense. A major from the battalion led I Company up through the mountains, made a flank attack. All night long on the 12th, we walked, climbed, and he stopped us within 200 yards of the main German defense. And we kept real quiet, deployed out there. He said, now you're going to attack at dawn. We fixed bayonets. We had always kept our bayonets on our rifles. And some of our artillery shelled the German line of defense, and then they sounded the attack. Shooting was going on, the whistles were blowing, and yelling and everything. They normally tried to scare the Germans as much as we could, make as much noise as we could. Platoon sergeant and I kind of was on the right flank. We saw a little rock wall. He beat me to the wall, and I laid there and I fired what I thought was a German defense there. I fired a clip. And I started to reload and see what he was doing. He wasn't doing anything. He was just laying there real quiet, face down. And I crawled over there, and he had 6 or 8 holes out his back. He'd been hit just before he got to that rock wall by a machine gun.
Without orders and on his own initiative, Crawford took off into the woods to stop the enemy snipers.
Now I just followed a little narrow ditch. Oh, it must have been 18, maybe 24 inches wide and almost 4 feet deep. I stayed pretty close to it, and sure enough, there's a brushy terrain, well camouflaged area right ahead. And out of that came a burst of machine gun fire. As I was running for this little ditch, he was shooting right under my feet. Some of the rounds probably went between my legs and never touched me.
Unknown to Crawford at the time, a total of 3 German machine gun emplacements were hidden in the immediate area. Ever the cunning scout, Crawford focused on getting to the gun that had just missed him.
Had a gas mask and some stuff on me. I had to get rid of it to crawl up this ditch. And I crawled back into that brush there above these guns here. I crawled by one of them quite a ways, and here was one right 10 feet below me, opened fire on me.
An overwhelming amount of fire raged from the hidden nests, pinning his company down. Crawford knew he must do something quickly. The survival of his company depended on the elimination of those enemy machine guns.
So I threw a hand grenade at that farthest one.
Crawford's grenade was right on the mark. The blast destroyed the enemy gun and the entire crew. Amidst the chaos, Crawford made his next move, taking aim with his M1 rifle, and in an instant, destroyed the second nest of machine guns.
And then I fired my rifle at the bottom one right by me because I couldn't throw a hand grenade there.
Fully exposed to the enemy and operating on sheer instinct and adrenaline, Crawford targeted the third and final nest with a barrage of grenades.
Then I threw another hand grenade over there where I thought some Germans was, and 2 or 3 more jumped up and ran into a nearby forest. This allowed the company to move on.
With nearly all of the hostile forces dead and the last of the Germans scurrying into the forest, Crawford dove into one of the destroyed nests, seized the enemy weapon, and fired at the fleeing Germans. In a truly heroic effort, Private Crawford single-handedly destroyed all 3 German emplacements. His actions facilitated the advance and ensured the safety of his company. Even though he had neutralized the machine gun positions, Crawford had more work to do. By this time, the enemy had reinforced and launched a furious counterattack.
I saw one of my buddies and the squad leader laying behind a big pine tree, pretty close to this little ditch that I'd occupied, and a machine gun was peppering that tree real hard. One of the guys had been shot right through the stomach and just missed his vertebrae. I put a bandage on him and everything, trying to get him stop bleeding. We heard a bunch of German talk coming from that area. Crawled down the ditch, and sure enough, here come a whole company of Germans spread out, coming up that area. One with a machine gun, he was looking down at my gas mask, studying my equipment, and he was only 30 yards at the most, and I thought, boy, here's another machine gunner, I'm going to get him. And I had his head in my sight and couldn't have missed, but something just wouldn't let me pull the trigger. Something just said, don't do it, don't do it. And I didn't pull the trigger. All of them went by us, but that guy with that machine gun, he was scanning the ditch real close and saw my tracks in there, crawling around in there. So he looked, there he saw us. He said, Hans up, and they all come storming around us with their rifles, snorting and hollering. I was listed missing. I finally got word that I was a prisoner after they had already awarded the medal to my father at Camp Carson. I was surprised. I didn't think anybody knew anything took place up there.
Because Crawford was captured and became a POW immediately after his Medal of Honor action, he was never officially presented the medal by the President of the United States. It was not until 1984, over 40 years after the fact, that Bill Crawford received his official recognition. At the Air Force Academy graduation ceremonies, President Ronald Reagan honored Crawford by hanging the Medal of Honor around his neck, a final tribute to an unassuming all-American hero.